At ASoldiers. If I sound a little raspy today, it's because I lost my voice singing to the Backstreet Boys last night at karaoke. I thought because I was filming a video about movies, I would wait until it was nighttime to give you that kind of like cinematic atmosphere. You know, it's totally not, because I actually filmed this earlier today when there was real daylight. Finished fully editing the video, realized I hated it, and then had my brain not allow me to sleep until I filmed a better version of it. That's not it at all. So I live in Vancouver, BC, and our restrictions have been lifting a lot more lately, hence, you know, absolutely killing it at Avril Lavigne last night. But one of the things that also has opened up are movie theaters. So a couple weeks ago, some friends and I went to go see a movie for the first time in like 4 years. It has nothing to do with the pandemic. I just never go watch anything ever. We went to go see The Green Knight, which is a retelling of the Arthurian legend of Sir Gawain and the Green Knight, starring the snack of an actor Dev Patel. And as an English major who knows the original story, I had thoughts, feelings, opinions, and concerns over that movie. Stylistically, 10 out of 10. Adaption-wise, like 6 out of 10. Then I started thinking about retellings, and then I started thinking about book-to-movie adaptations, and through a series of events with absolutely no ulterior motives whatsoever, we've arrived in the here and now of the filming of today's video. I'm also filming on like a fun and fresh low camera battery, so who knows what today's video is gonna look like. Book-to-movie adaptations are ridiculously hard to pull off just because the switch in medium often means that things are left out. And that's why I think not all of my favorite books should be movies. Like, as much as I want to see a Raven Boys movie, or a House of Hollow movie, or see Ray Bearer put on the big screen, I just feel like the rules of their world do not translate into a visual medium very well. So my list of books today are books that I think would translate visually into movie format the best. So without further ado, and in no particular order, let's go over a list of books that I think would make amazing movies. And even though I never go and see anything ever, if these were released, I would be #1 in line. These are a mix of YA and regular adult, and so the one I want to start off with is one that I think would just be magical on a big screen, and that is The Night Circus by Erin Morgenstern. I feel like this book is going through a resurgence, a renaissance, if you will. When this book first came out, I don't think the public was ready for this magic realism, gaslight fantasy. Also, that's what it's called. It's gaslight fantasy. This book is not gaslighting you. If anything, it's a delight and will treat you very well. Edwardian era London magic circus carnival magic realism kind of book that centers around the circus of dreams. Not only the people that built the circus or that run the circus, but also a rivals to lovers duo that is locked in a magical competition, as well as a big fan family in the circus itself, and it's the POVs of some characters who visit the circus over and over again. But as a movie medium, you got a lot to play with. You have color or lack of color. Probably could cast like 1,000,000 Cirque du Soleil performers in this. You got some sexy rivals to lovers tension, and the magic in this is not so overly complicated that it would make it difficult to adapt. If anything, the set designers would have the time of their lives trying to make all of the rooms that Celia and Marco create by themselves. You could have like an entire like Disneyland, I mean not Disneyland, we don't like them, Universal, we'd have a whole Universal Studios like world of just all the rooms that they create. Could you imagine walking through that? Oh my god, it's so beautiful. Could you imagine the merch line for this? I'm just saying, there's a lot of money to be made off of me specifically. Next up is a book that is also historical, but a little bit more on the modern side of history, and that is my new favorite contemporary, which is Last Night at the Telegraph Club by Melinda Lowe. I think this bridges and connects the historical film craze with the coming-of-age movie quite well. Plus it's an adorable queer love story and goes into Asian American problems and women in STEM. This is about 2 teenage lesbians in 1950s San Francisco as they both come into their own identities and explore the queer club scene at the time. Our main character Lily is Chinese, so it goes into the racial problems and prejudices against Chinese people during the Cold War. Even just from the cover, you know that there are going to be 1,000,000 beautiful backdrops for this. You have the strict traditional Chinese household that Lily lives in. You have the overly colorful Chinese restaurant down the street. You have the smoky and sexy lesbian bar, but you also have the warm, cozy gay apartment that Kath's friend Tommy has. And then you have the choice of like every street in San Francisco, because they are walking all over the place. These girls must have calves of steel, because as far as I know, all the hills in San Francisco are like this, and I don't think that they've changed since the 50s. Plus, the 50s is just such an interesting decade stylistically, so I think you could do a lot showing the characters' personalities through fashion and hair. If I don't see this being bid on or in the works within the year, I'm going to take fate into my own hands and write some very strongly worded letters to as many movie execs as I need to make this happen. And if you need help running a script at all, just like Netflix, hit me up. This next book is one that I am truly been holding out hope for years and years, for a sequel, for a series, for literally anything. I am Pandora. This book is the hope that lives in the jar that will not forsake humanity. And YA is going through a vampire resurgence at the moment, and what better book to turn into a gritty, dark vampire movie than The Coldest Girl in Coldtown by Holly Black. See, this book has enough camp to make it fun, but enough horror to make it stick. This is a dystopian vampire novel where vampirism is a disease, and anybody who is a vampire or gets bitten by a vampire has to go into these segregated cities called cold towns that the governments have set up. Our main character Tana wakes up after a house party to find that her and her boyfriend are the only two people that survived a vampire massacre, but her boyfriend has been bitten. Now it's a race against the clock to get Tana and her boyfriend to a cold town before he turns, and they cut a deal with a mysterious vampire along the way who turns out to be not exactly who he says he is. I would film this in the style of a CW show, like sexy people being sexy, but also like gore. There are some lulls in this book that I think would actually be great for a film crew to expand the world and explore those connections between people, because there are some people in here that are so interesting that I would love more of. Like, this would be an instance of the scriptwriters changing the book a little bit and the audience not minding. Now, when I'm talking about books in this video, I'm talking about very generally, like I think their theme or their characters would be fun to look at, but for this one, I have a very particular scene in mind that I think would be amazing. The cold towns themselves are hidden within these giant walls, but the way that you get into Coldtown is that you go to the top and then they like lower you down into the city. So I'm imagining that Tana steps out of the elevator cage and she's on the top of the wall and she looks down and the camera pans out to show the expanse of the Coldtown and like all the lights that are on, and then it kind of zooms in on some people like looking up at her and you're like, are they vampires? Are they not? What's happening? Oh, I'm getting shivers just thinking about it. As they say, cold hands, dead heart, and I'm waiting for the indie studio that did the first Twilight to get their ass in gear and get on this. Now onto an author that I'm not sure many of you know that I love, but I really like Amy McKay, and I think The Birth House would be a fantastic new historical movie. Historical shows and movies are like all the rage now. You know, they're the vibe, they're the trend, they're the mood, so this would, you know, be like a Downton Abbey, Bridgerton, third historical show that I've never watched. This takes place in the rural town of Scotts Bay, Nova Scotia, where our main character Dora becomes an apprentice to a midwife quite early in her life, and it's her life living with the women of Scotts Bay. It's also like a little witchy, but also goes into medicine and like new medical discoveries of the time, and then a male doctor who comes to town from the big city who has weird ideas and is like fucking up the medical field for all of them in the Bay. I would pitch this as like Discovery of Witches meets Little Women, but like more chill. Plus, I am a sucker for a good landscape shot, and I've never been to Nova Scotia, but I hear it's quite beautiful. Look, Canada is a lot bigger than you think it is. I've never been to the East Coast. I have no idea what's going on over there, but I would one day like to visit. All right, so for this next one, I'm gonna have all of you close your eyes, and we're going to mentally go back to the year of 2012. I know it was a wild year. The height of YA dystopian movies was nigh, and this is when we started getting like The Hunger Games and Divergent a couple years later, and then all of the really shitty dystopian knockoffs, mostly made for TV movies. So I here and now am pitching the idea to make this dystopian a movie because I think this one will not disappoint us all, and that is The Ones We're Meant to Find by Joan He. This is an environmental sci-fi dystopian where we kind of fucked the world up, so all the plate tectonics are really weird. So now the main character lives in this giant floating compound in the sky. It's like green and like has low carbon footprint and like low energy expulsion. This follows two sisters, one of whom has washed up on the shores of an island with no memory other than the fact that she has a sister and she must return to her, with the other one being the sister who lives in the compound tower and is trying to find a way to find her other half. There's not too many characters, so it'll be easy to keep track of everybody. You can really focus on those interpersonal connections. Plus, this book would not have a big budget. Hear me out. There's really only two settings in this book. We have crumbling beach house on an island in the sea, and then we have the environmental compound, which is all like, you know, white tile and glass. So I'm thinking we can recycle some of the sets that we used to have from that early dystopian craze. So like just take the set of the Hunger Games and maybe the Maze Runner and the first Divergent movie, you know, just dust some things up, put a new coat of paint on something, and like, you're good to go. Although they would have to figure out a way to make the color blindness thing work for the first half of the movie, because, you know, they tried to do it in The Giver and it was bad. But other than that, I think it would be quite easy to adapt. Not to mention, the whole idea of like recycling set pieces goes with the theme of environmental dystopian. You get me? What indie studio is gonna pick this up? Is it gonna be you? Is it gonna be you? I don't know. It's up for grabs. And then I am surprised and disappointed that nobody has picked this book up yet, because I feel like it is a travesty, nay, a tragedy, that House in the Cerulean Sea by TJ Klune has not been optioned for some kind of rights. Do I even need to explain what this book is? Like, I'm sure you know. If you don't, like, hi, welcome to the internet. Have a look around. This follows Linus Baker, who is a worker in the Department of Magical Youth, and he is tasked with going to the orphanage called the House in the Cerulean Sea for the most odd of magical children. And when he gets there, he has a bit of a rough time of it at first, but eventually falls in love with the headmaster and learns to respect the island and like love all the children there based on their differences. And it's this whole beautiful like found family hug of a book, and it's so gay and it's so wonderful. Think of all the child actors' careers that we're gonna be launching with this. Stylistically, this would be so bright and whimsical and colorful. Like, think Alice in Wonderland meets Percy Jackson, but like not shitty. Remember how good the movie for Miss Peregrine's Home for Peculiar Children was? It's gonna be like that, but gayer. On the DL, I do think this would be the most difficult to recreate, mostly because it's just so odd and very highly stylized. CGI would have to be good though. No cutting corners on my blob child. Clancy deserves the best you got. And lastly is a horror thriller book that I think would translate very well to screen in the same vein of like Crimson Peak and Bly Manor, and that would be Mexican Gothic by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. This follows Nami, a girl in 1950 Mexico City whose cousin marries a rich white man and goes to live with him in this secluded mansion in the middle of the mountains. When she starts getting some concerning letters from her cousin, her family sends her to the old Gothic estate to see if her cousin's okay, and of course, things are not always as they seem. This is chilling and creepy and unsettling, and I feel like even with some just basic camera work, you could really make like mist and shadows really work for the audience. The fashion, the casting, the culture would really bring this book to life, especially with like the weird ass, creepy ass family. This book is atmospheric as fuck, and I feel like you could really, really mess around with color and style. And the special effects for the dreams and hallucinations are like easy enough to do. You know, they're just like disturbing. There is so much tension in this book. I feel like you couldn't go wrong with putting it on screen, especially near the ending when we get to explore more of the mansion and we see all these hidden rooms. I feel like you could just let a handful of set decks go feral in a Victorian mansion and you are on your way to an Oscar. I personally would not go and see this movie because I'm a coward and hate anything remotely scary, but I feel like in general, this would be a good one. Well, my camera hasn't died on me yet, and I'm still sitting at 22% battery, so fate was on my side today. Please leave down below the book that you would ultimately like to see adapted into a movie. Like, I didn't touch TV shows in today's video because I feel like it's a whole other thing, so like let me know if you want me to do that because I have thoughts. Book to movie adaptations are like the Wild West of filmmaking. Like, is it going to be beat for beat, scene for scene, an amazing rendition of my favorite book? Or is it gonna be the director decided halfway through to be like, I'm gonna do my own thing, and then we have like something barely recognizable, Percy Jackson, City of Bones. Although on the DL, if you are over the legal drinking age in whatever state or country that you are in, I highly recommend playing a drinking game to Percy Jackson's Sea of Monsters because it is my favorite bad movie of all time. Ooh, I haven't worn lipstick in so long because I'm always wearing a mask, and I just keep catching myself in the viewfinder like, oh my god, Linda Evangelista, what are you doing in my household? So it's now much later than I would like it to be. I hope my upstairs neighbors are okay with me yelling about books at like 10 p.m. This video is gonna go up late because I'm filming it late, but maybe if I can, I'll try and upload it in the evening, and then it's like, we're doing this real time. You know where to click like the video, you know where to click to subscribe. I hope you guys are all having a nice day wherever you are, and I will see you all next week. Bye!